In the vastness of Ontario, there are literally tens of thousands of kilometers of hiking trails traversed by thousands of outdoor enthusiasts every year. But what happens when those trails go through your backyard? Our Ontario hubs have a line on a bit of trouble in paradise, so can we welcome, from our studio at Western University in London, Ontario, Mary Baxter, who leads our Southwest Ontario hub, and here in our studio, Mary Tawes, freelance writer, and may I say, what a delight it is to have you back in the building, a one-time producer for the agenda, and it's so good to see you again.
It's great to be here. Good to see you.
Now, I'm going to call both of you, even though I know you both well, by your full names, because we got two Marys on the program today, and it's confusing enough. So, here we go. Mary Tawes, to you first. You've got a piece on the website about a situation in Hamilton where things have gotten so nasty, we're into expropriation right now. Give us the background of the story.
Well, you'll know this very well, being a Hamiltonian yourself,
Hear, hear.
that Two and Webster's waterfalls are very popular, and they've only increased in popularity. They're in the Flamborough area. Hamilton is home to these gorgeous waterfalls, and there is a trail that runs between these two waterfalls. And on that trail is a private property. And the homeowners, Luc Lalonde, his partner, lived there on that land since 2010. Things got so bad, traffic was so busy that they had to close down that trail in 2016.
What are we looking at right now?
That's October 2015. I'd say that's about the peak season for the waterfalls with the beautiful colors. And there's about 20 to 30 people, according to Lalonde, at the front of his property on this trail at any one time.
And they just walk on his property, and it's, up until now anyway,
Right.
It's been okay.
Right, yeah. There was an agreement with Bruce Trail at the time that was sort of managing that land and adding another layer of security for the landowners, but they'd had to close that down in 2016 because the Hamilton Conservation Authority just wasn't able to keep up with security. Okay,
was it okay for a while and now suddenly it's got out of control, or what's happened?
Well, things got a little bit out of control. You know, bodily functions happening on their property, sexual behavior at the end of the street.
What?
Racial slurs. They're a same-sex ethnic couple, so they got a lot of language that was inappropriate and really hate speech. And I think everyone on all sides of this case agree that that's inappropriate. Right. No way to live on your property. But the issue now is that there's a swath of land that the HCA is looking to expropriate to reconnect the trail between the two waterfalls.
So the Conservation Authority wants to expropriate that piece of land. In other words, take it away from the people who own it right now, so that this issue goes away. Do the people who own the land right now, are they okay with that expropriation?
They are not.
They are not.
I mean, there's been a lot of back and forth. I think the landowners, from speaking with them, they have tried to have negotiations. And in fact, their lawyers, the HCA, and the landowners are still in negotiations, hoping that it doesn't come to this. But the 36 square meters, that chunk of land that they're trying to take, they're looking at that as an alternate route to the one that was previously there up until 2016. The landowners and actually the community are showing up to HCA meetings, and they're fighting back.
No kidding. Okay. Well, lest anybody think that this only happens in Hamilton and not anywhere else, Mary Baxter, we're going to bring you into the discussion right now. How widespread, since you've looked into this, is this phenomenon of sort of public trails and private property coinciding, but occasionally not all that well? How's that happening across the province?
Well, Steve, across the province, there's about 80,000 kilometers of trails, would you believe? A lot of those are walking trails or non-motorized trails, and then some are for snowmobiles and that sort of thing. So they really depend on private landowners to exist. And what people may not know is that landowners, private landowners, they usually don't get any money for allowing that access. They actually donate the access. And there's also sometimes what happens is, you know, the rail to trails kind of movements, and where they've been establishing trails on railroads in recent years. Those trails actually might be municipally owned, and but they might cross through privately owned property. So on either side, you know, it could be the same farmer who owns the fields or the woods on either side, kind of thing. So yeah, it's there's lots of opportunities for things to happen, and yet it's also because of the private landowners that we have access to those trails.
Can I understand what the deal is, though? I mean, on the one hand, the private landowner allows the public to traverse their land in order so that this trail can be complete and it's a beautiful outdoor natural experience. What do the landowners get in return for allowing the public to use their land?
Well, as I said, they're not getting money. It's just a part of they want to be able to share. In some cases, in particular with some rural communities, many property owners feel that it's really important to be able to share what they have to help educate people who may not otherwise have access to the outdoors like that. But the thing that they get along with that and concerns is that there might be liability concerns along those lines. So when they work in agreement with an organization, then usually the organization undertakes some of that liability because they might be concerned about things like if somebody strays off the path and if they're going into a farm field, you know, corn plants are really high and farm equipment is really big. And if somebody's kind of walking through there in harvest season, there could be, you know, something could happen. So having that liability is really important. And then also somebody might be coming in and doing something to maybe a crop that's growing. And so then again, the farmer loses money for actually hosting that trail in an example like that. So there's lots of things that they could get.
Let me just make sure, Mary Baxter, I understand the legal angle here. Are you saying that if something bad happens on private property, but that is part of a public trail, if you like, the private landowner is not going to get sued for that, are they?
As long as there's an agreement in place with the organization that's running the trail. That's one of the big things that organizations will give property owners is relief from that liability.
Gotcha. Okay. Mary Tawes, is this a one-off, I mean, what you've been describing in Hamilton?
Well, I think Mary Baxter makes a lot of good points. And just to add to her last point, which connects to your question, in this particular case, the Bruce Trail had a handshake agreement with the landowners up until 2016. So that's how people
That's in the Hamilton case.
That's in the Hamilton case. That's how people were able to pass through the two waterfalls in that area. And the handshake agreement was great because it added that extra layer of security in case there was ever, you know, someone being sued. We know a lot of times people wander off that trail, and there have been some tragic deaths actually at these waterfalls. So that was one concern the landowners had. Now that the Bruce Trail has been removed from their property because traffic was so crazy, you know, they're concerned about what they would be liable for. Of course, there's, you know, Trespassing Act and some other things that protect them, but there's that.
There actually were deaths?
There were deaths,
there were deaths.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases, people are trying to get, you know, a better photo, crawling over off the trail. It's quite sad. But to your particular question, this is a very unique case. And I think HCA, Bruce Trail, would both agree with that. It's very unusual not just to have a trail running through private property, but it's how close they are. It's the proximity they are in to these landmarks that are so popular. And their home is just right on the corner of where that path is smack dab in between those two waterfalls. So that does make it a very unique case. But as Mary was saying, there are some concerns with, you know, sharing of land on these trails that can be learned from this case. It can,
sure.
Yeah.
Mary Baxter, in your experience and based on what you've looked into, for example, in Southwestern Ontario, does it appear that hikers are behaving increasingly badly these days?
I don't know if it's just hikers, and are they acting increasingly badly? There's a couple of questions or a couple of issues that are going on. I was talking to Patrick Connor of the Ontario Trails Council this week, and he was saying that part of the challenge is that people definitely, when they're coming on trails, whether they be hikers, they might not realize that they're on private property. And so they might go and stray off, as I was mentioning, they might stray off the trail, or they might do some sort of damage or something like that, just because they're not even aware that the nature that they're walking in is privately owned. So there's a bit of a lack of awareness that's going on that needs to be addressed. There's also, in some cases, where people are using trails in ways they weren't intended to be used. So for instance, people who drive all-terrain vehicles may go onto a trail that's intended for walking only, and again, they might be straying off the trail and causing some damage, and there's actually a lot of concern about motorized vehicle use of trails in rural areas.
Follow up on that a bit if you would, because I heard something, you know, near Barrie, maybe Innisfil, where I don't know if it was ATVs or snowmobiles in that case, but when you're talking about motorized vehicles, what's going on out there?
Well, in near Barrie, in Innisfil, the snowmobile club there, it's early days yet. We're going to be looking into this. But what we've heard is that private developers have bought a fair amount of land in that area, and they've bought land where there have been trails existing for the local snowmobile club for many, many years. And the private developers have now told the snowmobile club that they won't allow snowmobilers access to their properties, and will pursue legal resources to if they find people who are trespassing. So that's about all we know at this point, but we're hoping to find out a little bit more in the weeks to come.
Mary Taz, I mean, expropriation is really the final card in the deck, right? I mean, once you get to that, that's basically the suggestion that we can't find a happy solution here, so we're actually going to take your land away from you forcibly. Are there any other options short of that to find some harmony in this story?
Well, the HCA did say it was a last resort and that they did not come to the decision lightly. You know, after reviewing this case and looking at some of the other management strategies that some other attractions within nature have had in our country and in the United States as well, sometimes there's not a win-win situation, and sometimes there's even a lose-lose situation. In this case, the people visiting along this trail aren't enjoying it very much because there's not really a management strategy in place. The landowners certainly aren't enjoying it very much because it's all of these people sort of damaging their property and saying things that are not, you know, quite hateful to them. And on the other side of it, HCA isn't able to, you know, have as many people enjoy nature and enjoy this beautiful wonder that we have here in the province. So really, I think we need to be looking to places like the Grotto at Bruce Peninsula National Park, where they have, you know, management strategies in place. They have ticketing, they have time slots where people can go. And I know some people that I chatted with, including some of the community members, didn't like the idea that we need to pay into enjoying something that should really be for all of us.
And it's so formalized now, too. If you're buying tickets and, you know, you can go at this time and so on, I mean, that kind of takes some of the steam out of it, doesn't it?
It certainly does, but then when you look to places such as, you know, Iceland, where they had a marketing strategy and cheap tickets to get people to go there and enjoy the natural beauty of Iceland, now they have all of these soil erosion problems, they have trafficking problems, they didn't have the infrastructure in place to protect the environment and the people who live there. So as population grows in Ontario, this is something we're going to have to increasingly look at.
Can't somebody just put up a super big sign that says, hey, you're about to go on somebody's private property, behave yourselves? Is that not an option?
Well, I like to believe that people are mostly good, but when you get large numbers of people, unfortunately, that might not always be the case. And I think, you know, some more formal management strategies are needed.
Mary Baxter, as Mary Taz suggested, there was a handshake agreement in place that handled this situation in Hamilton for the longest time. That appears to have broken down now. Do we need to do sort of more formal negotiated lawyers, contracts, that kind of thing to make this issue go away in a peaceable fashion?
Well, when I talked to Patrick Connor, one of the things that he really emphasized was that anyone who's dealing with a handshake agreement these days shouldn't be. They should be getting things in writing. He urged that with both trail organizations to make sure there's written agreements, and also landowners, because they protect everyone. The day of the handshake is pretty well over.
It just sort of reminds me of, can't we all just get along a little better? Anyway, I want to thank the two Marys for bringing this to our attention. This is a really interesting story, and as Mary Taz suggests, we're going to see more of it in the years to come as more and more people move into this area. Mary Baxter from the Southwest Ontario Hub, and Mary Taz, freelance writer, former Agendan. Welcome back. Nice to have you both on the program tonight.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.